The galaxy was wide, ancient, and full of secrets. Among those secrets, one shadow spread faster than any starship could travel. The name of the Draconian Armada. Entire planets whispered of them, trading stories like frightened children telling tales in the dark. The Armada was a force that did not negotiate, did not reason, and did not leave mercy behind. Wherever their black ships passed, death followed quietly, leaving nothing behind. No survivors, no debris, not even a single trace of life. It was as though the universe itself had swallowed what they destroyed. In the human colonies on the rim of explored space, the stories were almost like legends. Traders spoke in hushed tones about worlds emptied overnight, about cities that simply vanished while their inhabitants slept. Scientists speculated, diplomats worried, but the distant colonies carried on, believing the Armada was too far, too dangerous, too impossible to reach them. For Earth, the idea of the Draconians was almost a myth. Humanity had grown bold, pushing outward into the stars with confidence. But confidence, it seemed, had a price. The first warning came quietly like a ripple before a storm. Outpost Elysium, a prosperous human colony with 70,000 residents, stopped sending messages. Routine check-ins were missed. Then the emergency signals failed. Ships sent to investigate returned with only the void in their sensors and the silence of empty space. Every trace of life on Elysium was gone. No buildings remained. No stations hovered in orbit. Not even dust floated in the void. The Draconians had visited and left nothing but emptiness. Captain Elias Dorn, commanding the UNS Valor, was among the first humans to glimpse what was happening. His ship patrolled the edge of known human space, scanning for pirates, smugglers, and rogue fleets. The Armada was something else entirely. As his sensors flickered, picking up faint shadows across distant systems, a chill ran through the crew. They were not looking at warships, they were looking at instruments of horror. Massive, black, jagged ships moved with terrifying precision, as if the darkness itself had taken form. "They leave nothing," whispered Lieutenant Mara, her voice trembling. "They erase everything." Elias stared at the display, his jaw tight. He had read reports, heard stories, but seeing the Armada with his own eyes was different. The stories had never captured the cold, absolute certainty of destruction. Entire fleets, entire colonies, they were not captured, not conquered. They were wiped from existence. Humanity was known in the galaxy for its resourcefulness, its determination, and its stubborn survival instinct. Yet for the first time, Elias felt a creeping doubt. Could humans withstand this? Could they fight a force that did not play by the rules of war, that treated life itself as expendable? Still, the captain clenched his fists and breathed deeply. Humanity had always survived the impossible. Earth had been scarred by wars that had shattered continents. Colonies had survived harsh stars, violent atmospheres, and deadly plagues. Humans were clever, adaptable, relentless, and somewhere deep in Elias's mind, a spark of defiance began to grow. He looked at his crew, the faces lit by the soft glow of the control panels. Young engineers, battle-hardened officers, trainees fresh from the academy, they were all here facing the unknown together. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him, heavier than any starship hull. We may be small, he thought, but we are human, and humanity does not vanish quietly. Outpost Elysium's disappearance was only the beginning. The Armada had begun its journey into human space. It moved in silence, without warning, without mercy. But somewhere beyond fear and despair, humanity's courage began to stir. A spark that could ignite a flame that might burn even against the darkest shadow the galaxy had ever known. In the cold emptiness of space, with black ships drifting silently toward the human colonies, Captain Elias prepared to make a choice. Stand and fight or disappear like so many before them. And though he did not yet know how, he knew this truth. Humans would never go quietly into the dark. The human fleet had never faced anything like the Draconian Armada. Across the void, the black ships moved with a terrifying precision, their jagged shapes cutting through starlight like blades. The UNS Valor drifted in the outer rim, and Captain Elias stood on the bridge staring at the massive shadows on the sensors. His crew's eyes reflected the fear and awe he felt himself. This was no ordinary enemy. This was the kind of force that made humanity seem small, fragile, and fleeting. "They are huge," whispered Lieutenant Mara, her voice almost lost in the low hum of the engines. "And they don't broadcast anything. No identification, no signal." Elias clenched his jaw. He had read the reports, heard the legends, but nothing compared to this. The Armada did not announce itself. They did not negotiate. They did not warn. They simply arrived, and the universe trembled in response. The human fleet moved into formation, shields raised, weapons charged. Every pilot, every engineer, every soldier knew the odds were against them. And yet there was no hesitation. Humanity did not flee in panic. They did not bow before the shadow. They held their line. Courage burned silently in every chest. Then the Armada struck. Light exploded in the darkness. Entire human ships were gone in seconds. Hulls disintegrated as though they were made of paper. Alarms blared, but no cries reached the bridge. Communications were instantly jammed. Elias's stomach twisted as he realized that this was not a fight of weapons and strategy. This was a fight for existence itself. Evasive maneuvers, Elias shouted. But even as the order left his lips, another ship vanished in a flash of molten metal. The Draconians did not aim for victory. They aimed for erasure. The crew of the Valor worked frantically. Shields flared, energy beams charged, missiles launched. Some hit. Some destroyed minor ships of the Armada. But nothing could stop their advance. The enemy moved like shadows with intent, absorbing attacks as if pain and loss were meaningless concepts. Elias felt a cold realization settle into his bones. This enemy was not human, and it was not merciful. The bridge fell silent for a moment. The human fleet, proud and stubborn, was faltering. Ships that had been symbols of hope were now nothing but sparks in the void. And yet, despite the horror, Elias felt something stir in his chest, a pulse of defiance. Humanity had faced insurmountable odds before. They had survived plagues that wiped cities, wars that shattered continents, and disasters that should have ended them. They don't want territory. They don't want prisoners. They want nothing left, Mara said quietly, her voice trembling. Elias nodded, his eyes fixed on the advancing darkness. Then we give them something to remember, he said. In that instant, humanity's courage became its weapon. Ships that remained fired relentlessly, weaving through death and destruction. Pilots maneuvered with reckless bravery, sometimes sacrificing their own lives to buy a few precious moments for others. Engineers rerouted power, mended shields under fire, and kept hope alive with every spark and hiss of energy. Even as the Armada tore through the fleet, Elias refused to give in. He felt the weight of countless lives on his shoulders, yet he would not bow. Humans did not surrender in the face of fear. They adapted, fought, and endured. The first encounter with the Draconian Armada was a lesson written in fire and ash. It was a lesson in fear, but also a lesson in human resilience. For the first time, the galaxy saw humanity's unyielding spirit. And although many ships were lost and countless lives vanished, the Valor and its crew held together, defying the darkness with every heartbeat, every breath, every desperate act of courage. Elias looked out the viewport, where black ships glided like monsters in the void. His jaw tightened, his hands gripping the console. He knew the fight had just begun, and somewhere deep inside he felt the spark that would guide humanity through the coming storm. We may be small, but we do not vanish quietly. The human fleet was scattered across the void, trembling under the shadow of the Draconian Armada. Every starship that had once gleamed with pride now seemed fragile, like a paper boat in a storm. Captain Elias stood on the bridge of the UNS Valor, watching with a heavy heart as ships disappeared in blinding flashes, leaving only the emptiness of space behind. The Armada's weapons did not merely destroy, they erased. Hull's crew memories all vanished in an instant as if they had never existed. Another one. Gone, whispered Lieutenant Mara, staring at the sensor display. Her voice shook, though she tried to steady it. Each disappearance was a reminder that the Armada's power was not measured by numbers or strategy. It was measured by absolute erasure. The crew worked frantically, launching counterattacks, weaving evasive maneuvers, trying to hold the line. But the Draconians were patient predators. They struck with cold precision, anticipating every move. Every human strategy, every bold charge, seemed insignificant against their relentless advance. Elias felt a mix of anger and despair rising in him. Humanity had faced countless enemies before, but never one like this. They are not just killing, Mara said softly. They are removing us from existence. Elias clenched his fists, feeling a fire ignite inside him. Fear was natural, but surrender was not an option. Humanity had survived worse than fire and darkness. Cities on Earth had been torn apart by wars. Colonies had been crushed by rogue storms. Entire fleets had been destroyed in unthinkable disasters. And yet humans endured. They adapted, they fought, and they survived. The Valor's weapons flared as the crew fired again and again, desperately trying to buy time. Some shots found their mark, tearing through the Armada's ships, but the black vessels moved as if pain was meaningless. Each loss weighed on Elias like a stone on his chest, yet he forced himself to breathe, to focus. His eyes scanned the void, calculating, planning, searching for the smallest advantage. Amid the chaos, communications from other human ships crackled in and out. Fear was in every voice, trembling, breaking, but so was determination. Pilots risked their lives to shield fleeing vessels. Engineers rerouted energy to shields that barely held. Soldiers fought with everything they had. Humanity's courage flared like a beacon in the darkness, fragile yet unyielding. Elias, what do we do? Mara asked, her hand trembling on the console. We fight, he said, his voice steady despite the horror. We fight because we must. We fight because we are human, and humans do not vanish quietly. Even as the Armada tore through the fleet, humanity held together. Ships fell, crews perished, systems failed, but the line remained unbroken. Every sacrifice bought time. Every act of courage gave hope to someone else. The Valor became a symbol, a flickering flame standing against the consuming shadow. The true horror of the Armada was not just their weapons. It was the idea of nothingness, that an enemy could arrive and make all that humans had built vanish without a trace. Entire histories, lives, dreams, futures, all gone in moments. Elias felt the weight of this truth pressing down, heavier than the void outside. And yet he also felt something else, a stubborn spark, a defiance burning brighter than fear. Listen to me, Elias said to his crew, his voice strong. They may erase our ships, our cities, even our names, but they cannot erase what makes us human. Our courage, our hope, our refusal to bow, that is ours, and that will live on. The battle raged on, darkness against light, death against determination. The Draconian Armada was a horror without equal, but humanity's spirit was unyielding. Each moment they held, each life they risked was a statement. They might fear the shadow, but they would never let it define them. And as the stars burned quietly around the combat zone, Elias understood the truth of the fight. The Armada had shown its horror. Humanity would show its courage. The galaxy would remember both. Back on Earth, the news of the Draconian Armada's advance spread like wildfire. Panic gripped the colonies, shaking governments and civilians alike. Cities prepared for evacuation, fleets scrambled to form defenses, and every human heart felt the weight of fear. The Armada was no ordinary enemy. It did not conquer, it did not negotiate, it erased worlds. People whispered the words in dread. No survivors, no trace. Only horror remained. In the halls of the United Earth Space Command, Admiral Reyes studied the fleet maps with grim intensity. He traced the shadows of the approaching Armada across star systems. They are coming faster than anyone predicted, he said, his voice steady but cold. We cannot outrun them. We cannot hide. And surrender. Surrender means nothing. Around him, commanders exchanged worried glances. Many wanted to retreat, to save what they could. Some even suggested negotiating with an enemy that had never spoken, that had never left a world standing. But Admiral Reyes shook his head. Humanity had a different way. They had always survived impossible odds. They had always fought even when death seemed certain. We are not fighting for glory, he said, his eyes sweeping the room. We are fighting for survival. Every fleet we can gather, every system we can defend, we do it because humanity refuses to disappear quietly. This is our line. We either stand here or we cease to exist. The plan he outlined was dangerous, almost suicidal. Humanity would use the dying star of Solara Prime as a trap. It was an unstable sun, its core already collapsing. If the Draconians could be lured close enough, a hidden array of energy manipulators could trigger the star's final collapse. The resulting supernova would engulf the enemy. The cost would be high. Entire fleets would be sacrificed to hold the Armada in place. But Admiral Reyes believed that it was the only chance. Humanity had no other choice. In private, Elias Dorn, captain of the UNS Valor, studied the map of Solara Prime. He felt a mix of fear and determination. The plan was reckless. Many would die. Many had already died facing the Armada. Yet there was something undeniably human in the choice to fight, to make a stand against annihilation. This is what it means to be human, he whispered to himself. To risk everything, even when hope is fragile, even when fear is endless. Across the colonies, civilians prepared for the inevitable. Families hugged longer. Children asked questions they could not yet understand, and people prayed, not necessarily for safety, but for courage. Humanity was about to step into the jaws of extinction, and they did so with their eyes open. The fleets gathered near the Solara system, a motley assembly of warships, cargo haulers retrofitted for combat, and defense platforms that had not seen battle in decades. Every ship carried the weight of countless lives, the memories of planets lost, the hope of a species that refused to vanish. Elias walked the bridge of the Valor, looking at his crew. Young and old, they all understood the stakes. Fear was there, but so was determination. Each heartbeat carried a silent vow. Humanity would not disappear quietly. Admiral Reyes addressed the assembled captains through the comms, his voice firm, unwavering. We are about to do what has never been done. We are about to face a force that leaves nothing behind. Many of us will not return, but if we stand together, if we fight with every ounce of courage, we may survive. Remember this. The Draconian Armada destroys, but it cannot destroy what makes us human. Hold fast, fight together, and do not go quietly. The fleets prepared to jump into Solara Prime's system, a place that would become a battlefield unlike any other. The stars outside the observation windows burned cold, indifferent witnesses to the courage and fear of the human race. Every pilot, soldier, and engineer knew that this moment could be the end, but it was also the beginning of something greater. And deep inside Captain Elias, a spark flared brighter than any fear. Humanity was about to face the Armada, not with surrender, not with silence, but with the fire that had always defined them. Against the darkness, against annihilation, against a horror that erased stars, they would fight. Because humans did not disappear quietly. Humans fought even when the odds were impossible, even when hope was fragile. And that spark, small, defiant, unyielding, would guide them into the storm. The human fleets entered the Solara Prime system with heavy hearts and tight grips on their controls. The star glowed ominously, its surface flickering with instability. Every pilot, soldier, and engineer aboard these ships felt the weight of their choices. They knew the plan was dangerous, almost suicidal, but this was humanity's last stand. There was no retreat. There was no surrender. There was only fight. Captain Elias stood on the bridge of the UNS Valor, staring at the dark shapes of the Draconian Armada approaching. Hundreds of black ships, massive and jagged, filled the void like a swarm of predators. Their silence was deafening. Not a signal, not a word, not a warning, just the inevitability of destruction. Elias swallowed the fear rising in his chest and steadied himself. Hold the line, he whispered to his crew. Hold them here. We fight no matter what. The battle began with a sudden burst of light. The Draconians struck with precision, tearing through the front lines of the human fleet. Entire ships vanished in seconds, leaving only sparks and silence behind. The screams of those lost were cut short, swallowed by the void. But the humans did not break. Every ship that survived retaliated, firing weapons with desperate precision, weaving between explosions, daring to stand against a force that should have crushed them instantly. Lieutenant Mara guided a squadron through the chaos, dodging massive beams of destructive energy. Each movement was a gamble, each shot a chance to slow the enemy. She glanced at the Valor's shields flickering under fire and felt a surge of determination. We cannot let them reach the inner systems, she said, her voice firm. We hold them here. For every life lost, we make them pay. Admiral Reyes's orders rang through the comms. Keep them near the star. Every ship that falls buys us time. We are the bait. We are the wall. And we will not falter. The Valor charged into the thick of the Armada, weaving through massive ships and relentless beams. Elias watched as friends fell. Ships were torn apart, yet humanity's line held firm. It was not victory yet, but it was defiance. For every loss, 100 acts of courage rose to replace it. Engineers patched systems under fire. Pilots risked death to shield transports. Soldiers fired with hands steady despite shaking hearts. Humanity was alive in every act of resistance. Hours passed like minutes in the chaos. The star of Solara Prime flickered, ready to collapse. Every moment was critical. The Draconians moved deeper into the system, drawn by the human fleets. The trap was set, but the price was immense. Elias felt the weight of countless lives pressing on him, yet he refused to let despair take hold. He knew that this was the moment humanity would be remembered, not for defeat, not for fear, but for courage. In a final, desperate maneuver, the Valor led a charge to draw the heaviest ships toward the heart of the system. Explosions lit the void in every direction. Sparks and debris floated in silence, the cost of defiance written across the stars. Every crew member on the Valor knew the danger, knew the likely end, but they held steady. They fought not for themselves, but for humanity itself. "Hold fast," Elias shouted. "For every soul lost, for every world erased, we fight back. We are human, we do not vanish quietly." And in that moment, against impossible odds, the Armada hesitated, drawn deeper into the trap. The humans were dying, but the fire of their defiance shone brighter than any weapon the Draconians possessed. The battle at Solara Prime had begun. And though the cost would be unimaginable, humanity had shown the galaxy something the Armada had never encountered, a species that refused to be erased, a species that fought even in the shadow of annihilation. The heart of Solara Prime's system burned with a quiet menace. Its unstable sun flickered, sending waves of heat and light across the battlefield. The Draconian Armada pressed deeper into the system, drawn by the human fleets like moths to a flame. Captain Elias stood on the bridge of the UNS Valor, sweat running down his brow, eyes fixed on the approaching shadows. Every sensor flickered with movement, hundreds of black ships, jagged and deadly, closing in. Lieutenant Mara's voice broke the tension, sharp and clear. "Captain, they're almost in range. The trap is ready." Elias nodded, his hands gripping the console. Every crew member on the Valor, every pilot, soldier, and engineer in the human fleet understood what was about to happen. Many would not survive. Many would vanish in the coming fire. But humanity had chosen defiance over fear, courage over surrender. They had no other choice. "Prepare the array." Admiral Reyes's voice echoed across the comms. "This is the moment. Hold your positions. Every second counts." The fleets formed a desperate wall, sacrificing themselves to hold the Draconians near the star. Beams of destructive energy cut through the void. Ships exploded in blinding light, and yet the human line held. Each explosion carried the weight of courage, each dying ship a testament to the refusal to vanish quietly. Captain Elias watched as his crew fought with everything they had. Shields flared, weapons fired, engines burned at maximum. The Valor took hit after hit, but it held. Every life aboard the ship was precious, yet they had accepted the risk. Humanity's survival depended on this stand, on their ability to lure the Armada into the trap. And then, the moment arrived. The hidden array activated. Waves of energy pulsed outward from the star, destabilizing the already fragile sun. Solara Prime trembled, its surface roiling like a living thing. The Draconian ships, massive and seemingly unstoppable, were caught in the growing gravitational chaos. Their formation faltered as the star's core began to collapse. "Now," Elias shouted, his voice raw. "Hold them here. Every second matters." The fleets gave everything. Pilots flew through fire and debris. Shields flared in desperate bursts, and human hearts beat faster than the pulse of the dying star. The supernova's energy surged outward, consuming everything in its path. The Draconians tried to flee, but the collapse was unstoppable. Black ships cracked, twisted, and disintegrated as if the universe itself was rejecting their presence. In the middle of the chaos, Elias and his crew felt the cost. Sparks rained inside the Valor, alarms screamed, and systems failed. The ship rocked violently, yet Elias did not waver. He knew that this moment was humanity's answer to fear, their statement to a galaxy that had underestimated them. Every life lost was a sacrifice, but it was not in vain. Humanity's courage burned brighter than the fire consuming the enemy. The supernova roared to life, a wave of light and destruction that engulfed the Draconian Armada. For the first time in the galaxy's memory, the Armada did not leave behind nothing. They were vanished, erased by the very fire they had sought to bring to others. Humanity had paid dearly. Hundreds of ships sacrificed, countless lives lost. The Valor itself trembled, systems failing, yet they had completed the mission. Captain Elias looked out at the glowing void, eyes filled with both sorrow and awe. He had lost friends, comrades, entire crews, but in the heart of horror, something eternal had emerged. Humanity had survived, if not intact, then in spirit. Their defiance, their courage, their refusal to vanish quietly, This was the legacy that would endure. The battle at Solara Prime was over. The supernova's light spread across the system, erasing the remnants of both fleets, leaving only fire and the echo of sacrifice. And though many were gone, one truth remained. Humanity had faced annihilation and had answered with unflinching courage. The supernova's light faded slowly across Solara Prime, leaving a quiet void where once a battle had raged. The black ships of the Draconian Armada were gone, disintegrated by the fire of the dying star. Entire fleets had been consumed, countless lives lost, but the galaxy would never forget what had happened here. Humanity had faced annihilation and, against impossible odds, had answered with courage. On Earth, the news spread cautiously at first, then with wonder. Survivors from distant fleets recounted the horror and the bravery. Entire generations of humans had been sacrificed in a battle that no one expected to survive. Monuments were raised not just to the fallen, but to the spirit that had refused to die. In every story and every whispered memory, the message was the same. Humans fought, even when hope seemed lost. Captain Elias had not survived the Valor's final moments. The ship had been consumed by the chaos of the collapsing star, along with its brave crew. Yet his actions and the courage of every human who had fought at Solara Prime became a symbol. Humanity had stood against the impossible. They had taken the enemy into the jaws of destruction itself and had refused to vanish quietly. Lieutenant Mara, one of the few survivors who had escaped earlier through emergency pods, drifted in the darkness of space, watching the distant glow of the new supernova. Tears ran down her face, a mixture of grief and pride. "We did it," she whispered. We showed them. We are human." She clutched a small data chip from the Valor, containing logs, messages, and memories of the crew who had given everything. Their story would be remembered. Their courage would inspire. Across the galaxy, distant observers, civilizations that had once feared humanity, paused to reconsider. The Draconian Armada had been a legend of terror, unstoppable and absolute. And yet, it had fallen. Not because of overwhelming technology, not because of superior numbers, but because humans would not surrender. The galaxy had learned a lesson. Courage, defiance, and hope could turn the tide against even the most terrifying force. On the newly rebuilt fleets, survivors began to speak of rebuilding, of honor, and of remembrance. Every pilot, engineer, soldier, and captain carried the memory of Solara Prime in their hearts. Their loss was immense, but their spirit remained unbroken. Humanity had survived not because the Armada failed, but because they refused to fail themselves. In the empty reaches of space, where silence now reigned, a single thought echoed through the survivors' minds. No survivors? No trace, only the horror? Yes, the Draconians had brought horror. They had erased countless lives. But in the end, the humans had endured, and that was the part of the story the galaxy would carry forward. On Earth, as the stars shone above the planet's cities, people looked up with both grief and determination. Monuments bore the simple words, "They left no survivors. They left no trace." But humanity endured, and it was true. Humanity had been tested, and the fire of courage had burned brighter than the darkness of fear. The galaxy had seen terror, but it had also seen defiance, hope, and unbreakable spirit. Humans had fought when all seemed lost, and though their losses were vast, their legacy was eternal. The story of Solara Prime became legend, not as a tale of defeat, but as a story of the human spirit. A species that could stand against annihilation, face horror without flinching, and rise from ashes to claim its place in the stars. The Draconian Armada's shadow had fallen, but humanity's light burned brighter than ever, and somewhere, in the silence between the stars, the universe seemed to pause, acknowledging a truth that could never be erased. Humans do not vanish quietly.